All right. Well, welcome back for part two of Lili Ristagno interview at City's Blood podcast, and right now we're going to talk about Death Valley '69, which is an animated. Wait, you had a very fancy name for this. I want to make sure I get it right. What is it?
Oh, it's an illustrated true crime novella.
Illustrated true crime novella.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got an awesome cover. And
I love
Thank you. Thank you.
I can get this on Amazon. Is that...
You can.
Yes. Okay. I'll make sure I put in the link for everybody. You've got some really neat little details that I hadn't heard before. And I thought I had heard, almost the whole gist of the story. I mean, I know about J.C. Bring. I knew about, there's a Terry Melcher and the whole I want to be a rock star, but he gets denied and that kind of thing. But there were just some little things in here. I did not know that much about Bobby Beausoleil before, or is it Beaujolais?
Beausoleil.
Beausoleil. I'm just going to let you talk because you're the author here. But for those of you like me who really didn't know much at all about Bobby Beausoleil or how he relates to the whole Manson, killings, tell us his story.
Well, I'd say that if there's a murderer here, which there is, it's definitely one of them is Bobby. Manson, it's debatable. I mean, I'm not like, oh, the poor man's innocent or, but like literally, Bobby went back after having killed a guy and stayed in the apartment several days to search everything because he was convinced that this guy had money. This is the music teacher. He went back a few days later to get something, and he heard this weird sound, and he realized that it was flies on the inside of the window after, him having left this guy there for 3 days. And he just went on in and got, his I think he went back in and got like the music teacher's driver's license so that he would be able to use it, and which was how he immediately got caught on his way out of California. I think he was driving down to Mexico in that the guy that he'd murdered's car with his driver's license, because Bobby had, he wasn't supposed to be driving with his license. And then they found the weapon in the wheel well of the car.
Bobby was from the interviews and other things I've seen in the past. Bobby was supposedly a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
Attracted to women. I didn't realize, though, and your book goes into a little more detail that he had his own. I'll use the term stable of women, and I guess was a pimp himself, just like Charlie.
I don't know if he was a for money pimp, but he definitely had, there was always, he could pick and choose where he was going to spend the night. Let's put it that way, Manson did tend to always try to keep somebody like that around, whether it was Bobby Beausoleil or like another one was one of the guys in the biker gang, Dan.
Tex Watson too.
Tex was the muscle, wasn't he?
The guy that I'm thinking of is the guy that they called Donkey Dick Dan, and he was I guess he was really popular. I don't know why, but he was.
You don't know why?
But yeah, he did keep a cadre of young men around him that could meet the girls that could bring them back. I mean, once he had them, he had no doubt in his mind that he could, with the right combination of, hypnosis and LSD administration, he could, get the girls to like basically be his slaves for the rest of eternity. But he had to get them. He had to get them in some kind of enclosed space, and so he had quite a few younger guys out there that would meet chicks and.
I know that Manson did time and had a mentor in prison that taught him music and possibly how to handle women or pimp women. But it seems like he went from that into uncharted territory when he started his own cult. And I'm wondering, did he have any examples? Something that he had like gotten that idea from, or was this Or was everybody starting a cult back then? Was Bobby Beausoleil a little cult leader? Was that just the thing to do in the late '60s in California?
Well, I think that's not untrue. But in Manson's case, I mean, with somebody like Bobby, it would be just for the obviousness of it, for the sex, for the power, like just to be a pimpin', I think with Manson, he obviously had a fine mind, if askew, but he was a voracious reader, and since he had done so much time in prison, by the time he was 35, he had a hell of a lot of conversations with people and read some interesting books about manipulation, about how to manipulate people. And I kind of think that he just, I think that he kind of had this half-baked idea in his head that it might, he might, I don't know if he thought that it was going to come out exactly like it did, but even before he went to prison, he had like you said, he had a stable. He literally had like girls working for him in Los Angeles by the time he was like 20 or 21. So, maybe the first couple of times that he was in prison, he learned how to be a pimp, how to keep the girls obedient and that kind of thing from that cellmate. And then maybe then the next time he was in prison, then he had creepy Alvin Karpis as his cellmate. And then he learned all the highways and byways of stealing and crime and so on and so on. I think he just sort of built up this philosophy.
Yeah.
Did you see that the recent Tarantino movie? It's like last year that came out. Yeah, it didn't. I've got my own feelings about it, but I was just curious. It seems to me you mentioned towards the end of the book about a connection with Steve McQueen and Jay Sebring. I found this interesting because of the Tarantino movie, because supposedly Steve McQueen was invited over that evening and was supposed to have been there.
Yes.
So either Steve would have ended up one of the victims, or there would have been an old-fashioned Hollywood, fist fight kind of thing, which is basically what happened at the end of the Tarantino movie. And I mean, Brad Pitt was I think the Brad Pitt character seems to me like a cross between Judo Gene LaBelle, who's a legendary stuntman in Hollywood that worked with Bruce Lee on what was that TV show, The Green Hornet, and maybe Steve McQueen, because it almost seems like if I was going to take a picture of who should play Steve McQueen right now, it would be Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a Hollywood stuntman, but he's still putting somebody who could fight back in that position rather than a pregnant woman, a coffee heiress, some Roman Polanski's buddy, and a hairdresser. And I don't mean to disparage Jay Sebring by just calling him a hairdresser, but I mean, I think everybody in America at least has the idea of them not being the most masculine of men. It's what are your ideas about this?
They were very high too.
They were all really high and messed up, or
Yeah.
well, I can't
Yeah.
imagine. I can't imagine Sharon being high because she was what, like 8 or 9
Yeah.
months pregnant. Now, Abigail Folger, I'm sure she could have been high, and so was it Wojtek? I can't think of his last
He
name.
was on everything.
Yeah.
So these guys may have been, unable to fight back. But if Steve McQueen were there, at least in my childhood brain, I like to think, that Steve would have fought,
Kick some ass.
would have put up a fight.
Oh yeah, for sure. He got all that practice on his wives. So
What do you think about about that being that story with Steve McQueen being a source of inspiration for Tarantino rewriting history like he did with that movie?
Once upon a time in Hollywood.
I guess it's as good as an excuse as any. I was really not prepared for the manipulation of nonfiction that happened in that. I really thought it was going to be like a straight up movie, like
Did you see Inglourious Basterds?
Wonderland, like that kind of thing.
But did you see Inglourious Bastards?
I didn't.
And I had the same problem with Inglourious Bastards because although it was a good movie, he rewrote history at the end. Instead of Hitler killing himself, in a bunker somewhere, they have Hitler being killed in a Parisian movie theater at the hands of a elite Jewish special forces squad sent by America. So it's like you have the Jewish vengeance killing the Fuhrer in this Paris movie theater. And I mean, if you want to fantasize about something, there's nothing wrong with the fantasy, but the way people watch movies and then they suddenly think that's fact. I think
Americans love happy endings.
Yeah, and I think there are probably a whole generation of idiots now that are walking around thinking that Hitler died in a Paris movie theater.
Yeah.
I was on tour down at here in Sacramento at Sutter's Fort, and I remember a woman pointing to Sutter's Fort and telling her daughter, because there was a whole school field trip out there, that, oh, this is where John Sutter kept his gold. If you know anything about the history of Sacramento, John Sutter didn't get any gold, and that, he may have killed a lot of Indians around there and stuck their heads on spikes outside that place, but that was not where he kept his gold, and that's not why he built the fort. But people make stuff up, and then they tell their kids, and their kids walk around, but that's what mom said. And so the idea of being a filmmaker, I think you bear a certain responsibility, just like you do with an author, is that if you're covering a historical fact, cover it accurately, and instead of a flight of fancy, which Tarantino has done on 2 occasions now, with those 2 separate movies. But he totally rewrote history.
I can't say it's Tarantino's fault if people can't be bothered to learn the facts, but no, I'm never going to say that anybody shouldn't tamper with history for a plot, but that's just not what I'm into. And as soon as anything becomes anything but nonfiction, I'm pretty uninterested in it, movies, books. Yeah. I mean, the real story is always so much
more interesting.
Yeah.
Humanity's capacity for inhumanity is worse than anything that anybody can make up. Back to the Steve McQueen thing, I didn't know that Steve McQueen got his drugs from Jay Sebring.
Everybody did.
Everybody did.
Yeah, everybody like in the Hollywood that crossover scene between like movie stars and up and coming musicians and like
that's why he was the hairdresser to the stars. He was the hairdresser and he was Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah, he was the hairdresser and he was Dr. Feelgood. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So I understood he was famous because he did Jim Morrison's famous locks, like that iconic haircut, that Jim Morrison was famous for. That was Jay Sebring. and I understand. I know the story about his, relationship with Sharon Tate and all that, but I had no idea that he was at that time possibly Hollywood's biggest drug dealer.
Well, and did you get to the part about his basement?
No, I didn't. Tell me,
Well,
please.
you're in for a treat. So Jay Sebring also had his entire, so he had, as a hairdresser to the stars, he had made really good money. And so at like 26 or whatever, he owned his own house, and he had the whole basement fitted out like a medieval castle with tons of like B&D rooms down in there.
Like a dungeon?
So yeah, like a dungeon. Yeah.
Wow.
He was super into that stuff. And there's some kind of, some people make connections between the dark stuff that he was into for like in a sexual cosplay kind of way, kind of crossing over into the paths of, there's a lot of people in Southern California that think they're witches and, talking to Satan. And, there's that whole, California has just always been
a mecca for
the hub for that kind of thing. Yeah. So like, somebody finds out that you have a sex dungeon, the next night they're like drawing and quartering goats, in your downstairs bathroom or something. Like there was some weird so for instance, there's weird speculation that Sebring ripped off a drug dealer, and these are two people that I think made it out of the country without actually getting interviewed. I don't think that they were in court at all, but supposedly a few days before Sharon had that night, when Sharon had people over, he had ripped somebody off in a drug deal, and he had been punished. He had been punished pretty severely physically by a Canadian, and supposedly these other two drug dealers were a Canadian and a Haitian. And so there were rumors about that there was, they put like a bad juju on him or something. I mean, you can, you can just keep grabbing and just keep putting stuff into this case, and it'll fit somewhere. It'll fit somewhere in 1969, even if it doesn't have to do with the Mansons. There's some creepy thing
that's
involved somewhere.
It's interesting. I hadn't heard the possibility of somebody getting burned on a drug deal and it being vengeance for that as a possible motive. But to be fair, even watching the movie as a kid and a lot of other documentaries, it wasn't until I want to years later that I really got down to the heart of the reasoning behind Manson's rage, and that was that Terry Melcher story, which I didn't. I mean, I had heard about Brian Wilson, right? Because he's the more famous person, and then the whole Beach Boys thing, and so a lot of the blame gets put on Brian Wilson. But I didn't realize Terry Melcher's pretty much the guy, I guess, that Manson was really had it out for, right? That's who he's.
Yeah, and he did dick him over. I mean, he truly did. He at two different occasions, he told Manson that he was going to come out to the ranch and listen to Manson and the girls sing. They had this whole thing that they'd been working at where it was like featuring him, but the girls did all kinds of harmonies and dancing and everything. And, they wanted to be like the hippie Von Trapp family or something. And he twice just didn't show up. No call, nothing. And there they were already with, a special meal that they had dived a whole lot of dumpsters to prepare. And,
Wow.
just, and apparently like Manson was just beside himself, just making everything perfectly perfect. And then like down there at the gate waiting to let the guy in rather than just waiting for him to buzz. Like, it was a huge humiliation of him in front of his followers for that guy to blow him off like that.
Terry,
And
to give anybody who's listening a background, Terry Melcher was a music producer, but he was also the son of was it Doris Day or
yeah.
so this is a bit of a spoiled guy, grew up in the business, nepotism probably helped him out, I'm sure, at some point. But he dismissed Manson's talent, right? Isn't that basically just and did he never even said and didn't really speak to Manson, right? There was did he use Dennis?
He didn't think he had talent. Bottom line, he didn't think he had talent. It was Wilson that got Terry to listen.
Yeah.
And some people like Pink Floyd on acid, other people like Leonard Skinner. Like for whatever Dennis Wilson was hearing when he heard these guys sing, he thought it was amazing enough to tell Terry Melcher about it. But when Terry heard it, he was just like, this is crap.
Well, he thought it was amazing enough to take one of the songs and put it on a Beach Boys record.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. I can't fault him with being furious about that. That's kind of like the lowest low that one artist could do to another.
He didn't even give him writing credits on it, right?
No.
So there's I could see the rage there that Manson must have had towards Dennis Wilson and Terry Melcher after being dicked around like that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it justifies what Manson did, or the way he lived his life, but he definitely had an excuse to be mad at Terry Melcher, that's for sure. Have you heard the?
But it is really bizarre to tie that into like all these other things, like a race war. The ability in your mind to turn all these different chaotic, horrible situations into all having to do with each other and being buried under Death Valley. I mean, wow, he should have been writing children's books.
Did you I did not, like I said, there are some parts of this that I don't know because I speed read most of it, to be honest with you. I need to go back.
Well, make sure you read the part about the underground of Death Valley. That's pretty fascinating.
I definitely will now. But
it has to do with him compiling biblical lyrics and Beatles lyrics to discover us and dig to a certain place under Death Valley where everyone could be eternally young.
This is where he goes from pimp to Messiah figure, and really gets cultish with that. Is there anything that because I heard Charlie didn't do a lot of the drugs that he had his followers doing. And for him, he used them as a control thing. So I don't want to blame like he did so much acid that he thought he was God. Because I have friends like that, that did too much stuff and did think they were God. But I don't want to.
And now none of them get along, right?
Unfortunately, one's in jail right now. He got caught for producing DMT. Completely. Yeah.
Wow.
Very, very, very close friend of mine who I worked with for years here in California. Moved back to his family's home in Georgia, and he came from a wealthy family, so they had these two homes on the property where Grandma used to live. He was now living because Grandma was gone, and this is a true story. He calls up his 85-year-old mother and says, "Mom, can you go over to the old house and go down to the basement and turn off the Brunson burner I left burning?" because he had his DMT lab in the basement of the other house, and he left everything going and called his 85-year-old mother to have her go over there and turn the lab off so that the house wouldn't burn down.
Where was he where they couldn't do it?
God knows. You know, I mean, he was somewhere where
That's pretty
He
important.
was all the way across the street, man. Mom was just closer.
right? Just insanity. And I've met his mother and I met his father before he had died, and they're literally the nicest people you've ever met on earth. His mother, you know, like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth kind of thing. A real Southern genteel woman, and he's just lost it. And I tried, me and a few friends tried to get through to him, you know, over the internet, through Facebook, through emails, even call him, and he wouldn't hear it. He was posting stuff on Facebook saying, you know, I am God, and I'm posting God's playlist, and he was playing music for like 6 days straight. Every 2 minutes was another song. Like you could tell he hadn't slept for 6 days. And then he was posting on there, I need a place to cook. So anybody who's got a place, I'll make it worth your while, you know, contact me now. And he's showing his pictures of his jars and all this other stuff. And they caught him with 42 pounds of DMT.
Wow. Is he in prison now or what?
Yeah. I lost track of where he's at in his trial process, but he is in custody right now. This was
I don't even remember what that is. Was that the stuff that Hunter S. Thompson was on when he was partying with the Hells Angels?
Yeah.
It's the
Yes.
spirit. It's the spirit
Well, in Vegas.
that everybody talks about. You know, that the whole it's the spirit molecule. It'll make you see God. It'll make you think you're God. And
okay, so like the flying, the stuff that the where Birdman flew kind of people, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the
They
stuff
could,
where you go
like,
down
they
to
could transform into a jaguar and live in the desert for 5
Exactly,
days
yeah.
or something.
you go
Yeah.
to the Amazon, you hire a witch doctor, and he cooks up this potion for you, and it tastes like hell. And well,
Yeah.
my friend comes from a chemistry background. His father was the guy who invented the glow stick. Right.
Uh-oh, that's it right there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, I mean, he sold it for like nothing, and of course, now they've made millions off. But his father was a brilliant guy. He also was a bit of a nut. He had the largest coffee mill collection in the world.
Coffee mill?
Antique coffee mills. He restored them, and he had over like 500 of these things. I mean, it was ridiculous. So, you know, the craziness runs in the family. But as soon as my friend got a hold of DMT, there was no coming back. There really was no coming back. And I've seen enough with acid and other things to know that that's a temporary thing. You come back from acid. But my friend,
Did you read the part in Death Valley 69 about Tex Watson taking the what is that stuff again?
DMT?
It
LSD?
might be the same thing, but it's from the Datura plant. And it grew
Right.
on the ranch.
Right.
And he took it, and he was found, like, they would find him like crawling on his knees in downtown Los Angeles, babbling nonsense language in a playground full of children. Like, I can't remember what the drug is, but it's one of those, you know, like is it Jimson weed, maybe?
It's not that.
I think it's the Datura things.
Datura, yeah.
Yeah, because that'll make you hallucinate really bad, and it's horses eat it, and they call it loco weed when the horses eat it, because they just go nuts. You know, it'd be fun to be a horse and be hallucinating and stuff like, "Hey, I'm a cow," but. Don Juan, in the teachings of Don Juan, that was like the first drug he took, and everything was in the shades of red that he saw.
Wow.
Yeah, and he thought he was a.
You gotta read that. You gotta read that part of the book about Tex. That's a big deal too, because I think that had a lot of bearing on what he was able to do on both of the nights that he went out for Manson.
How long did
he had probably been awake for 3 days at least on each of those occasions. And then also, you know, there was also a murder of a drug dealer that doesn't get that you don't hear about very much in conjunction with this whole story. that also had to do with Tex
Is that
ripping
the one that
somebody
had,
off.
is that the guy who had his ear cut off, or is that somebody else?
No, that was the first guy that we were talking about. And that was Bobby Beausoleil's thing.
Oh,
But Tex Watson, he was another really good looking guy. He was a straight A student from a small town in Texas. And instead of going on to use his college scholarship, he went to LA and opened a wig shop of all things. That's how he knew hairdresser guy
J.C. Ring.
Sebring. Yeah, they were in the same circles from way back then. And by the time he got involved with Manson, he was just, pretty much half fried out of his mind. But chicks liked him, and he could bring Manson lots of chicks. And plus, he was like a good handyman. He was good at fixing things, and he was pretty obedient. So when Manson said, "Hey, you've been up for 3 days, take these guns and knives and drive the chicks over to this house and kill everybody," and Tex was like, "Okay." That happened a couple of times with the known Manson murders, but then also after that, but before anybody was apprehended, Tex ripped off a drug dealer. What was his name? His name was like Fat Bart or something. He was like a really well-known LA drug dealer. Tex ripped him off, and there was some kind of altercation where somebody wanted to collect for the money for the drugs that they never got paid for. And this guy, the drug dealer, ended up getting shot and living. And he actually was the only person that they were ever able to prove in court that that Charles Manson did actual physical harm to.
That's an African American guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, his name was like Big Bernie or something like that. Yeah.
I know what he looks like. I've got his face on my head.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't even know what he looks like.
I've seen it. I've seen him interviewed. I've said there's
Well, he's a damn lucky guy.
so there's footage out there. How much time did you spend researching this book as opposed to your first book?
Probably a couple of years. Yeah, a couple of years. I mean, one thing is I work at the library, so I can get a lot of access to things like photos that wouldn't be out in the public domain. And then and then just the internet. Like, I think I wrote the bulk of it without using anything for the internet, but it's really helpful to fact check things like addresses, trying to figure out how old somebody was, or and then sometimes even seeing a picture of them, because some of these minor characters are really fascinating too. The woman that I'm always intrigued by is the really wealthy woman that followed them around for a summer. I think it was like the summer of 1970. It was before anybody went to jail, but she was this heiress, and she had a like a Super 8, which was like, kind of like a rich person's toy to have back then. A Super 8 is the film camera.
Is that where all the footage from the ranch comes from?
Yes. Have you seen that?
I've seen that. I was always wondering. I'm like, who was out here filming them doing it? Because it's not.
Where did you see it? Oh my God. I've read about this footage forever. And this woman, and because she died, like, oh my God, she died in an asylum. Really mysterious. Like, she had a breakdown, and then somebody found her the next day, and she had been like injected with the wrong kind of a drug, and somebody saw some hippie girls around the hospital, that kind of thing. I remember my mom lived in Santa Cruz. She was always, even when I was like 6 or 7 years old, she was always telling me about people that were getting disappeared like that. And it was people that she thought had something to do with that family.
It's
My parents were, they lived down the street from them in the Haight-Ashbury before they moved back to Los Angeles.
oh
And
wow.
yeah, they were like really present in the culture, like the rock culture.
Do you know the Wavy Gravy story with Manson?
No, I don't think so.
Apparently Manson pulled up with, I guess, a bus or something. Yeah, they had something, whether it was a carload of them or a bus load, or where. I think the story was it was a bus, but he pulls up with the family and up to the hog farm, and they were in the middle of meditation, and they were sitting there, with their fire lit and meditating and all this other stuff, and Manson jumps out of the bus, kind of like, and puts on his crazy routine and says, "You're all stupid," or "You're all, basically calling them all assholes. You're all wasting your time, blah, 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 blah." Gets this whole spiel, "Follow me," kind of thing. And Wavy Gravy gets up and looks at him and goes, "Get the fuck out." And that was it. That was the end of.
That's rad.
So,
Well,
yeah.
the hog farm was where he took one of the most interesting to me family members, Diane Lake, had grown up in the hog farm. And when Manson came along and said, "We'd like to take your daughter in our van. We're just driving around California aimlessly with no money." And her parents were like, "Yeah, sure, dude. Just, make sure she gets fed or whatever." And
What was her
that
name?
was how her name was Diane Lake, aka Snake Lake. And she was one of Charlie Manson's favorites for quite some time, being 13 and all.
Oh.
And she spent she wasn't involved directly in any of the crimes, but she was a longtime believer. She got indoctrinated so young, and her mind probably already having been fairly decimated with who knows what before that, growing up in that situation. It took her years to realize that Charlie wasn't God and that he wasn't in her head. But she turned out to be, she turned out to be okay, and she never had to go to prison or anything. But yeah, that was the hog farm. That was like,
Yeah.
that free loving, sharing the acid, sharing the kids.
And now it's a summer camp. Now you can send your kids there.
Is it?
It is. The hog farm has a summer camp. If you've got the money, you can send your kid to the hog farm just for the summer.
Are you kidding me?
No, it's true. That's I knew a girl who was she was a marijuana broker back when it was still illegal, and lived way up in Mendocino, and she sent her kids down, took her down to the summer, and let them spend the summer at the hog farm.
Oh, good Lord.
So yeah, if you've got the money and the ambition to do it, you can do it.
To me, that's one of the saddest casualties in the whole story, is that little girl. I'm sorry, I asked you and then I didn't give you a chance to answer. Where was it that you saw that that film?
The footage?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was a documentary, because I'm a documentary nut. I've made 2 of them myself, and so I scour the internet for documentary footage. And this was actually, I can't take credit for discovering the footage. I think it was already in another documentary about the Manson family, but it showed Squeaky, and it showed all the other family members, and it was old. It looked better than Super 8, like maybe it was color 16 or something, but it was pretty good quality footage of Spawn Ranch, and they even showed them giving tours or setting people up for a horse ride or something like that.
Yeah, they did that for the guy that owned the ranch as their for their rent money.
Yeah, and so it was amazing to see it because I didn't know it existed. I didn't,
Yeah.
all I've ever seen was a few pictures of them sitting under some rock, off of the ranch,
Yeah.
and then pictures of like the nook or something that Manson was hiding in when they went to bust.
Under the sink.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
exactly.
pretty
And
creepy. Yeah.
that's all I've ever really seen up until, like I said, that documentary actually showed, kind of what it was like, and it almost looked like just like a functioning dude ranch, or almost like if
Uh-huh.
you remember that Brady Bunch episode where they went to the Wild West and they find the old prospector. That's what
Yeah.
it reminded me of. That it was like it could have been shot at the same place for all I know.
Yeah. Oh, that's something to think about.
But this is great. I really
The
enjoy.
Brady Bunch meets the Manson family.
Yeah, this I'm gonna have to read this book, and I might have to make another episode with this just because of the Tex Watson thing and all the other stuff. It's you've opened up a whole nother like reinterested me in this case, because to be honest with you, I thought it had been done to death with all the movies and the TV shows,
Yeah.
Aquarius and everything else. But you've got some stories in here that I hadn't heard before and I haven't seen in documentaries before, and that's really great. I mean, kudos for finding all this stuff out, and I love your animation.
Thank you. That they won't. I'm not allowed to call it a graphic novel, so
That's a
that's
novella.
cool. That makes me feel validated. Yeah, I would love to talk about this some more. There's so many interesting characters and weird little side stories. Also, the story about I don't know where you are in the book, but the husband of one of the family members that ended up somehow slitting his own wrists and cutting his own throat in a hotel in London that had like no windows that he could have exited from. Yeah, what was Squeaky's counterpart?
I don't know.
David, the other girl in Sacramento, it was Squeaky and
Oh, wait, no.
they would wear like those red hoods together.
Yeah.
I know. At first I was.
Sandy,
Like
I think maybe
Sandy, huh?
Sandy something, who was a well brought up, upper middle class child, and I think she might have already been married to this guy when she started hanging out with the Manson family. But yeah, he came to a mysterious end. Oh my God.
It seems like
I think that the reason that it was this story called out to me so much is the palpable sense of fear that I got from my mother too when she talked about these stories. For her, it was like it had just happened, and it kind of had. I mean, I lived with her in Santa Cruz in like 1976 or something. So it was really, yeah. She was like, yeah, a lot of those people are still around. Not everybody went to jail for murder. Some of them just like stayed in Santa Cruz.
That was only 5 or 6 years after the murders, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
And they were still all through the 70s, they were finding weird ritual scenes up in the Aptos Mountains, where people had been obviously there was like slaughtered dog carcasses, and there had been people doing some pretty serious satanic rituals up there.
Manson had some lifelong followers that like remained true to him. I remember seeing, like, I don't know, there was Jerry Springer or a couple of talk shows over the years in the 80s and even in the 90s, where these people that I'd never even heard of before professed to being either family members or had gotten obsessed with him since he had been in jail, and literally were conversing with him via mail and doing whatever he wanted them to do outside. Have you heard about him? Like the thing in London, obviously that wasn't Charlie Manson over in London murdering somebody. But it could have been a family member.
Sure.
Is
Also, at that same time, you had the Father Yod people were over there in Britain also. That cult, the Children of God.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They'd send the women, they'd call it a fishing expedition, and it was, kind of like reel in some drunk guy and get his wallet. And yeah, there's a lot of room for crossovers there with the cults. Several different, and the Rajneeshis in London too, right around that same time, 1975, 1977.
What do you think it was back then that seemed to be like an explosion of cults? I remember watching TV shows about that guy who deprogrammed all the Mooney kids. He'd like kidnap your kid for you from the Moonies to get him back to you, and they made a big TV movie about that. It's everywhere I went, late 70s, early 80s, it seemed like from the Jonestown thing, whatever. It seemed there's an explosion of cult activity through the 60s and 70s.
I guess there were a lot of people that wanted to follow someone.
Everybody looking for answers.
Yeah. I mean, that's how that whole like the weird marriage of, which is not so weird today, but the weird message at the time, or the weird blending of rock bands, rock and roll people, and Hollywood people, like that had never happened before. That wasn't usual at all for the worlds of film and music to meet, unless it had to do with like musicals, But now is like bands partying at movie stars' houses and da 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 da. And one thing that I see that they all had in common was wanting to follow something, wanting to follow somebody. And there would always be somebody at these parties. Eventually, there would always be somebody that was willing to play the leader. And then, you'd have the rock and roll people telling the movie people about going to see the what's his name in India, that the Beatles went to.
Rajneesh, what is his name? I know you're talking about the doesn't his daughter a rock star? You're talking about the guy who taught them how to play sitar, Ravi Shankar?
No. Ravi Shankar was just a musician.
Ravi Shankar was just a musician, but he looked like him.
All right, so it was the guy that was it John Lennon called a fraud or something afterwards?
Yeah, yes,
exactly. Yeah, because that's what those guys always turn out to be, Yep. But I think that there was just there was this crossover of mutual curiosity that allowed quite a few rats to get in under the fence and
I remember
see an opportunity to control people, and I think maybe especially women.
I remember even into the early 80s. Do you remember something called EST?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
My parents went to EST training and came back changed people. And
that's unfortunate.
It didn't last, thankfully. After that they went to macrobiotic diets, and we were eating seaweed and tofu. But my parents were searchers too, and I often wondered, I guess I have to try to put it into perspective historically. You have the 50s American household, which was terrible but looked great on TV, right? So you've got everybody's an alcoholic, nobody talks about their feelings, and and that's basically the 50s. The 60s, suddenly everybody starts talking about their feelings. You have the civil rights movement, then you have, which this is the part that really blows my mind about the 60s. Everybody's civil rights, and you got all these hippie kids that are out there, yeah, peace and end the war and all this other stuff. As soon as equal rights for women start coming up, these same long-haired hippie guys that are out there supporting, stop the war and we're all brothers, they're like, oh no, shut up and start making me dinner again.
Oh, right. And thanks, MC5. Yeah.
I was just going to say that.
Exactly.
I was just going to say that.
It totally makes me, I mean, my mind does this split kind of thing. I'm like, wait a minute, peace, love, harmony, universe is like, get back in the kitchen. What the hell?
Isn't it weird that nobody's mind split open then?
I know.
And then finally when it did, it was the women, not the men.
No, it was a crazy time period. And then you get the men who are desperately trying to figure out, why, the relationships that their fathers had aren't working for them in the 70s and 80s. And yeah, that whole time period, I guess, was a time for searching. I just wonder, is it still happening now? Is it just that we're not seeing coverage of it? Are there just as many cults out there now? Are people still searching as much? Has the internet made it so easy to fact check something that less people are falling for this? I mean, I remember watching, do you remember In Search Of? I loved In Search Of. It was like my favorite show. Yeah.
Totally.
I remember, tonight, you need more about that. And tonight it's In Search of Saint Germain, the man who wouldn't die. And I didn't know there was like a whole cult here in California, and this woman with this crazy white woman with a crazy afro saying, "All hail me, I'm Saint Germain." She thought she was the reincarnation. That woman was real.
I didn't know it either.
Oh yeah, that woman was real, and she actually led like the Love Ministries or something like that. I love California just because of the weirdness and all the crazy shit, that's happened over here. And that time period, I guess, because it was my childhood, I really find fascinating. But I guess in a way,
there's a couple of really great podcasts that are almost exclusively about cults. Very well researched, going back, from Nexus all the way to people at the turn of the century, the turn of the last century,
Well, I wasn't that familiar with the with older cults. It's
oh yeah, California was always weird. It didn't just happen in the 60s.
Really,
people were coming there and trying to make other people do their bidding since there were humans. At least since there were white humans.
East of LA, they had the whole spas going on. They built these amazing, beautiful hotels and got people to come from the east to like sit in the hot water. And from there, it turned into a bunch of religious ones too. But like Kellogg's cornflakes, well, the whole cornflakes and Post cereals were all from a cult of good eating stuff. The graham cracker, all that stuff was, rich people would eat it.
Henry Ford tried to create his own cult. He wrote a book. He wrote a book telling all of his employees how they should live their proper moral lives. And this is the same time period when he's distributing this anti-Semitic leaf letter to all of his dealerships selling Ford. And then he has a rubber plantation in South America, I think called Fordland or something, where he actually forced everybody who lived there and worked for his rubber plantation to live by like Ford's, guidelines for life kind of thing.
Well, he was nuts. Henry Ford was completely nuts.
A lot of people, when they get any measure of success, they suddenly start to think that I should tell everybody else how to live.
Sure, yeah. Look at how well I've done. Don't you want to know my secret?
Yeah, what is it?
The secret is don't worry about making any money because it's just not going to happen. So
right. That's right.
Give up hope.
And if they offer you money to start with, take it. Anytime they offer you money, take it. It's like driving in San Francisco. Just expect to get in a car accident, and you'll be fine.
Okay.
I was just thinking if I wanted to start my own cult, I've done enough research on this stuff, and I guess the only part I'm missing is a complete lack of morality. I just can't imagine. It's just like, all right, let me sucker all these people into doing my bidding and giving me all their money.
Phil, I do this course that you should sign up for. Sign up for my course. And it's called Losing Morality. And I've got hundreds of people all over the United States are following me doing this course. It's just like $600 for the first lesson,
And I can
and
and
you
I'll
will
learn.
immediately start losing your morality. Like you'll feel like 100 pounds lighter after the first class.
That is what I need. You're my savior.
Just sign right here.
It's yeah, it is funny when I've seen so many of them. There was one in here in Sacramento where they separated families and made mothers like sleep outside of a doghouse and things like that. I think that was the Love family. There's some guy recently who got all these really smart and educated women to like tattoo their private areas with his initials.
That's the Nisex. That's the one I was just talking about. That's very recent. Yeah.
So I mean, it always that one really amazes me because everybody there was so educated and thought they were so intelligent, and they were just and they were following this.
Chloe from Superboy.
Like I tell everybody, nobody out there has the answers to your problems. Only you can find those. And anybody who's offering those up, even for a price, it's just. How pathetic is that anyway? You really need somebody to fix all your problems for you? You can't do it. You can't figure it out yourself. You can't go talk to a counselor, talk to a family friend, whatever, do some research, take a college class, take a class on losing your morality or gaining some.
Well, and I think a lot of the time it's the predatory person is noticing people that would believe it when you tell them that they're seeking something. They might have just gone to the bar seeking a gin and tonic, and like if you got a good enough game, you could convince them that they're searching for something and that will make them happy, and that they didn't realize that they were not happy until now, but you can help them get to this ultimate more. It's always more.
It's
more money, more chicks, more property.
I think this is how we have still roughly half or more of the country supporting our president right now. I think it's a cult-like following, and it's based on the fact that they have a perception of him being a successful, wealthy human being. Most of them don't ever even want to question that or do the research to figure out that there's a whole long story behind his success, if you want to call it that. But yeah, if you have money to flash around and you can say, I can make you this way too. Do you want to know my secret? Do you want to know how you can have this car or this house or this mansion or this island? It's everybody wants, everybody who doesn't have that stuff wants it. And if they think somebody.
Don't you want all these dirty, half naked hippie girls? Look, look what I've got.
Right? Oh my goodness. When I first came out here to California back in '98, I was hanging out with the hippie kids downtown, or the second or third generation of hippie kids anyway. And there's one beautiful girl named Jazz. I'll never Jazzy, whatever. Total, free spirit, living from sofa to sofa. But she had like the dirtiest feet on the planet, and she wouldn't bathe. She was so pretty, and she was just a pig. And I just remember telling her and her friends, I'm like, you have no idea what I do just to get you into a bath, just to get you cleaned up. But yeah, it's like, I like the hippie, I just don't like the dirt.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they're kind of inseparable most of the time.
Oh, God, on TV, you don't smell it. It's just like, oh, wow, isn't she pretty? All right. Well, thank you, Lily, for spending your evening with us.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, David. I'd love to talk to you some more about the next thing that I drew after Death Valley 69, which isn't published on paper work, but it's a very good story, and I've got it all put together, and I'd love to talk about it.
Absolutely. It's a couple of weeks from now. Sound good? Or you want some more time?
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
That's great. That sounds great to us.
It's not California though.
I don't care.
That's okay.
That's why this is
Okay.
called Cities of Blood. So it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. How about October 7th?
Sounds good.
Okay,
What day of the week is it?
Wednesday.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. 7 o'clock, same thing.
Awesome.
Yay.
Well,
Cool.
anybody who wants to pick up Death Valley 69 or Short Fuse, go to Amazon. I'll put the links. And
Also, if they wanted to, they can buy it from me, and then I actually get the money, which doesn't happen with Amazon.
can you send me the links to how they can
Yeah,
get
it's
that
just
directly from
it's deathvalley69.com.
you? Okay.
There's a
All right.
website.
I will
But
put it
either
on.
way, I'm happy for anybody to look at it. I've just found Amazon really troubling to deal with.
I've got my book with Amazon and with one other publisher right now. And to be honest with you, it's not great, but hey, it's at least a place where somebody can go get it and they can print them on
Yeah.
demand,
Yeah, totally.
So
Maybe I'll just I'll type that to you later, so if you want to include the website, you could.
absolutely, please do that. Yeah. All right, Lily. We look forward to speaking with you next time.
Yeah,
Okay.
have fun in Bend, Oregon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hope the fire
Thanks, you
stops soon.
guys. It's been a pleasure.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
night. It's nice meeting you.
Bye.